Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je suis Elisa Lachapelle, coordonnatrice à l'action éducative, citoyenne et culturelle au Musée McCord. On behalf of the museum team and of the McGill School of Continuing Education, I welcome you to this first meeting in the series, the McGill-McCord Dialogues, presented as part of the Bicentennial celebrations of the McGill University and in connection with our exhibition programming. Avant toute chose, je voudrais d'ailleurs reconnaître que le musée McCord est situé sur un territoire fréquenté et occupé depuis des millénaires par les peuples autochtones et qui n'a jamais été cédé par voie de traité. La nation Ganingiaga démontre toujours un profond attachement envers ce territoire qu'elle nomme Tiohtià:ke. Reconnaissant les conséquences désastreuses du colonialisme pour les premiers peuples, le musée McCord considère qu'il est de son devoir de contribuer à une meilleure connaissance des cultures autochtones et de soutenir le maintien de leur vitalité. L'exposition Voix autochtone d'aujourd'hui, Savoir, trauma et résilience, qui a ouvert ses portes au public montréalais l'automne dernier, œuvre d'ailleurs en ce sens. Today, we are pursuing a series initiated last September with the wonderful testimony of Wanda Gabriel, who was our special guest for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. In continuity with this program today, we are honored to welcome two artists, Owisokon Lahache and Candia Flynn, both based in Kahnawake, very much in relation to Indigenous voices of today. The presentation will also relate to the ongoing exhibition Parachute, Subversive Fashion of the 80s. I now introduce Dr. Carola Vale, Dean of Continuing Study at McGill University, who will present the lecture and our special guest. Last thing, just before I do so, I wish to thank Dr. Vale and the entire team of Continuing Studies for this partnership for putting together this program.
Merci Elise, c'est très bien, and welcome, bienvenue, Zego, Tansi, Tungat Sugit. As you just heard, my name is Carola Vale. I'm Dean of Continuing Studies at McGill University, and I welcome you here today. Today, we are gathered in Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. McGill honors, recognizes, and respects these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters from which we host today's event, in the spirit of the Longhouse, or gathering place, that used to bring people together from all over Kanagawa. As we celebrate the beginning of McGill University's 3rd century and the McCord Museum's 2nd century, we have an opportunity to reimagine the role that institutions of learning and culture like McGill and the McCord Museum can and should play in the life of our diverse society. As you just heard, we've launched the McGill-McCord Dialogues series last year on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation with the conversation led by McGill's Professor Wanda Gabriel. These sessions were created with the aim of breaking down barriers to cultural and educational institutions and to find new ways in which we can introduce art, culture, and education into our communities. And today, with our 8th dialogue, we continue these important conversations with a focus on one of the key aspects of Indigenous life, art and culture. Art plays a vital role in human life, directly reflecting our human interactions and bringing us not only joy, but also enlightenment through its various forms. I believe that institutions of higher learning have a responsibility to nurture, reinvent, and carry on the works of artists that have continued to preserve our very diverse and rich cultures through their work. Today's event is taking place in the month of March, the month when we also celebrate International Women's Day. This day has been designated as a global day to commemorate the cultural, economic, social, and political achievements of humans self-identifying as women. First Nation, Innu, and Métis women have and continue to be stewards of family, cultural heritage, and of their lands. It is in this spirit that we gather here today. We are very fortunate today to be joined by two very talented artists from Kahnawake, Owisokon Lahache, thank you, and Candia Flynn, who will share with us their work discuss their creative processes, and examine how art impacts our communities. My colleague, Carmen Cecilia, and I will introduce them in a few moments. Today's session is live streamed for the benefit of those who could not join us in person. If you missed any of our previous sessions, please feel free to view them, view the recordings that are available on the SES YouTube channel. And I would like to close by thanking my colleagues, both at the McCord Museum and the McGill School of Continuing Studies, for their hard work and, most importantly, their passion in organizing this series of events. A special word of appreciation goes to Paula Bernardino, Chair of the School of Continuing Studies Bicentennial Committee, and Maria Luisa Romano of the McCord Museum. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Carmen Cecilia, Director of Indigenous Relations Initiatives at McGill School of Continuing Studies, who will present our speakers. Thank you. Miigwech Nekromik Niawen.
Thank you, Corolla. Good afternoon, bonjour, wachea, saigon. I was hoping that this laptop would be lowered so everyone could see me. I have one of the best part of the jobs of the opening remarks, and that is introducing the speakers to really talented artists. Owisokon Lahache is a First Nations visual artist and designer living in Kahnawake. I also like to introduce Owisokon as a friend of McGill, the School of Continuing Studies. One day I was looking for a Mohawk artist to commission some artwork for the School of Continuing Studies and sent an email to Cyberspace, an online art gallery, and I got a pleasant reply with a phone call immediately. And from there, we built a wonderful relationship, and Owisokon produced some wonderful artwork for the school and has become one of our friends. Creating since 1984, Owisokon's passion is to increase knowledge about Iroquois spirituality, lifestyle, legends, and history through her art and design works. She's interested in corporate art design and creates visuals and material cultural related to First Nations and Iroquois life. She always has one-of-a-kind creations, paintings for exhibitions, and a supply of prints and cards available. In a few minutes, she'll share her artwork with us and her stories. Next, we have Candia Flynn. Candia is a citizen of the Nipmuc Nation, has a Namisco band, and she resides in Kahnawake. In 2018, she co-founded Healing Stitches with her partner, Don Barnaby. Through this platform, she has been able to design clothing into wearable art to help people on their healing journey while demonstrating resilience. Healing stitches can be found worn by many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. Her skirts have traveled to the UN in Geneva, worn to speak on HIV/AIDS in Indigenous communities, and they have traveled to the front lines worn by women, warriors of the land and water. Her greatest joy has come with a request by women and two-spirit relatives who would tell their stories of survival and resilience through their skirts. She has received requests to create skirts for missing, murdered, and Indigenous peoples and two-spirit peoples, advocates and survivors of Indian residential school survivors, the 60 Scoop survivors, cancer survivors, addictions, and incarceration survivors. That's pretty impressive. Candia is also an Indigenous educator, along with her colleague and her friend Owisokon, currently teaching middle school at Kahnawake Survival School. Working with youths and sharing her knowledge is a passion that she has. There's more about these two artists, but I will stop there and give them the stage so they can tell you more about who they are and their work. Thank you, merci, miigwech nakumik.
Sego. So before I start, I just want to do the thing that we normally do. Whenever we go to any event, we always bring our thoughts together and we give thanks to creation to make sure that the journey that we're on today is productive and good. And so I ask that all of creation honor us with kindness, love, and good path. So, I'm Owisokon. I get a little nervous at first, so if I kind of laugh inappropriately, it's nerves. All of the artwork that you're going to see in the slideshow I'm presenting is parts of the artworks that I've done. Okay, so I'm going to start from there. What I'm going to talk about is the journey forward of 7 generations, and this is basically why I create art. So when I look towards the future, I must first look to the past to understand the importance of having clear direction to imagine the future. Well, I come from a time within my community when there was no running water, electricity, or telephone. We were living outside of Montreal and had many tourists coming through our community and squatting within our territory. Our ability to maintain our original lifestyle had changed, and we adapted to living on reserve. I can attest to the fact that residential school played a large part in the deconstruction of First Nations society and culture. I grew up on Gunawaga Reserve 0700. I attended Indian Day School, which was run by the Sisters of St. Anne, where I was not allowed to speak my language, and I suffered inconceivable abuse. As a strong-willed child, I was in trouble a lot because I could not deny who I really was. And so there were things that happened that were just things that I don't think happen anywhere in the world today. So I was also very fortunate to have a very closely guarded secret. Our family had hid behind religion so that we could not be persecuted as heretics, heathens. My Duda Ista, which was my grandmother, was part of an underground group of knowledge keepers, and my Duda Ragani was a condoled chief and speaker of the people. How they hid behind religion was to have activities and things that were bringing the ceremonies within our culture and making it as if it was a normal, everyday occurrence. So sharing tradition and culture is a natural extension of their roles, and then this was shared through that hiding of ceremony and appeared to be storytelling. They had fires in the backyard, and we would get together and they would actually do the ceremonies, but would hide from the outside people so as not to be persecuted. We had the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Station was about 500 feet from our house on the other side of the streets, and so we had to be really cautious. My elders were visionary. They were delving into the future. In the early 1960s, I remember one night in particular sitting by a crackling fire, and the elders were talking about the future. And they spoke about a time that we wouldn't be able to hunt anymore or fish anymore, and that we would no longer grow or trade our own food or go to the river for drinking water. There were other things that they prophesized as well about the changes and the way that the earth is developing now, and how my Duda always hoped that we would grow our gardens and collect their medicines and hunt, and that we would fish in the same places that they did. Today, my grandchildren are learning our cultural secrets, and yet I'm certain that I really don't know where my great-grandchildren are going to live because of the way that things are progressing. So when I start to think about our elders' teachings, they prophesied that water would cost more than oil and nobody would carry money, and that the great-grandchildren would get their food by having these little plastic cards, and everything that they needed or wanted would be sent to their house like magic. And back in those days, when we didn't have telephones even, it was unfathomable that in the future everybody would carry a computer in their pocket. So, and that's basically what our phones have become. They projected that one day we would capture the energy of the sun and have it inside of our homes, and that one day we would see and talk to each other from the other side of the community and travel to the other side of the world. And we see that now today with people going back towards renewable energy and resources. So they also prophesied a great calamity, and that the return of our sky world family. That prophecy tells us that in close to the ends of times, we would see a lot of things that were and would be shocking to the people. Large amounts of animals that would die, fish dying, birds falling out of the sky. And when these things were being prophesied, and I was little, the earth was pretty healthy. You could go to the river and drink water from it. It was still very clean. So they said that we would also need to use our own languages to communicate with the Sky World family. So in those times where science fiction was unbelievable, it was like an unbelievable thing that they were saying to us. So today, much of their future visions have come to pass. There's a list of endangered Indigenous languages, and it's bleak. The previous trends of scholars to capture and record our history as though it only exists in the past has had First Nations looking ahead, visualizing our own future, and looking to develop educational initiatives to help maintain our languages, learn our culture. In the high school that we both work in, it's amazing to see how beautiful and how rich the culture is. We teach the kids the ceremonies, the languages, we teach them to be resilient and to also think far ahead to the next 7 generations. And we're also looking at how we can record these things to keep them alive. So in imagining a future family 7 generation, that's my primary motivation for inhabiting this future imaginary that we're looking at, by creating paintings that show our spirituality and tell our history. The advent of technology has exploded within my lifetime, and the first televisions and telephone party landlines, for those of you who are old enough to remember that, it was kind of a little strange. And today we have all of this instant communication, and some of the things that are happening that are really interesting is the use of VR and digital spaces where we can actually tell our own stories. So I love technology. It's fascinating, it's organic, it changes, it's always developing, and it's as if it was a living thing. And it has been given life globally by the very people who use it every day. And we can't stop its growth, but we can develop it in a direction that we want to imagine it. So first, we must create our own vision and develop a plan of action that will position ourselves not only in the existing cyber world, but to flourish while increasing our footprint within the future one too. Today, the emphasis on cultural preservation is being placed in the hands of First Nations. Kahnawake community is preparing by gathering cultural information. This human journey supports the development of youth and developing innovative leaders, research, conservation, technology, education, and community, and in communication. So where will we be in the future? There are very few Mohawks in the world, and a lot of people don't understand or realize that. of the world's population, we're 0.000006% of the world's population. There are only 50,000 Mohawks living in the world, approximately. So our distinctive hereditary way of life is constantly challenged for its very survival. We have modified and adapted and evolved our unique culture and society to survive within the modern world. So yes, we live in houses. Yes, we shop. We do everything that everybody else does. But we also struggle with relearning our connection to nature and to all of the things that creation has put there for us, and to do that in a very good way. We recognize that human society is a bit out of balance with the natural world, and that in the future we're in danger of losing language, ceremony, culture. My grandbabies are glued to the iPad, and with nothing but a few stereotypes to guide them towards learning their very own culture. So without preserving that knowledge and without creating new items for them to look at and to be involved in and interact with, when they don't have the time or they cannot go to a place that is actually having ceremony. So it's getting fewer and fewer where there's enough people to do those kinds of things. And the reason for that, of course, is because loss of language, elders that pass away, there's a wealth of knowledge that goes with them. Indigenous creators and others need to help to develop creative responses to protecting that future. Imagining a future construct, and digital and other artists are obliged really to create and incorporate multimedia, sensory, and also looking at traditional culture, material culture, and to bring those things back. It's the purpose that we need to do that is to correct the imbalance of not having that readily available to us at any time. If I wanted to learn about a certain ceremony, I have to find all kinds of people and go through all of the channels before I can find who actually knows it, and who knows it the old way and not a modified one, which is really sad because we have such a rich culture, and we have teachings that come from Sky World, where we brought things back with us. So we must openly and freely create that cultural content with our art, with new media, with interactive programming, and we need to entice the future generations to rebuild and appropriate our own First Nations culture. I see how global access can contribute to that, to imagining possibilities, evolution, recovery, sustainability. It's important to project that growing presence and to let other people know about who we are, what our worldview is, and to imagine what our future generations what will happen with them, and to maintain that a healthy journey as well. Imagining that future, we need to review our origins, our roots, our culture, and become the developers and producers of unique and futuristic legacy for youth. So we have a small window of opportunity to build that cultural foundation. And I tell people, well, I'm already old. I'll be 66 this year. And I still remember when we were hiding to do all of those ceremonies, and the meaning behind the ceremonies and the stories behind it, and how important keeping that information is, so that someday my great-grandchildren and 7 generations ahead will still have that knowledge and be able to honor creation and therefore help everyone else that's in the world. By using those cultural practices, it helps to bring more indigeneity back into our communities. So every time that resourceful elder who speaks the language and practices the culture passes on their final journey, that window of opportunity is steadily shrinking. So in these dark times, the vision of the future is really, what can we seek? Where do we go from here? Do we follow Sky Women's lead and leave the safety of Earth and go and travel into the stars and try to find a new world to take over and try to start over? Or can we truly vision being here? Sky Woman was like an amazing woman. She left her homeworld to come here to help populate our Earth here. And so when we look at that future, I can see how global access can change and to help people to see that 7 generations, how we can imagine our creative work helping and to actually take our grandkids and teach them in those ways and not have to hide anymore. It shouldn't be hidden. We need to work together to plan our presence, and having initiatives like this to be able to talk to other people, to help them to understand where we come from. We can imagine that future, and to make it interactive and experiential and digital, and that's what's in our hands now. One of the last things that I'd like to say about that is, when I take a look at the whole world in general, okay, we are all people, we are all the same in that essence. We all want someone to love us, so we want to love ourselves, we want to be happy, we want to be what we feel is successful, and we want to honor the gifts that creation gave to us. And sometimes stepping beyond that, that scary part of trying something else and then not sabotaging ourselves with success is a little bit hard. And I would like to say that when somebody has a passion and they want to do something, it's where you start from. It's where you suddenly begin to say, oh, I think I can try that, and then taking it and running with it, okay? And Candia has done just that. I was actually one of her teachers that encouraged her to start taking a look at what she could do. So, Candia Flynn.
Okay, there we are. I'm Candia. I feel like that last part was a little pep talk for me. I was maybe going into a little bit of a fear coma, but I'm back. I'm going to talk to you today about the art that I do, which is material art. My husband, Don, and I started Healing Stitches, which the name came from the women in my family are healers and work with medicine. It was not something that interested me. It wasn't my calling or my passion. But the way that they fix people up and care for people and love people was kind of what I wanted to transfer into the work that I do. Oh, there we go. So, Healing Stitches, we make ribbon skirts and wearable art. We tell stories, which our ancestors were storytellers. And they told stories through baskets, through oral tradition, through different ways to pass down teachings, ceremonial or lessons that they wanted people to learn, or about our culture. And so it's in that homage, I guess, that I pay homage in the work that I do. So I asked a bunch of women, matriarchs, what it meant to wear the ribbon skirts. What does it mean to you? And I got so many different answers because there are so many different reasons why women wear their skirts. Some people wear them for healing and for strength, which is why I'm wearing mine today. Some to feel grounded and connected to the earth. Some connect with their medicines when they have their skirts. To stay visible so that people know that we're still here. To remind us that we're sacred, that we are important, and that we matter. And the last one was actually Owisoko's contribution, because life is ceremony. So sometimes people mistake ceremony as something that you do at certain times, but the way that we conduct ourselves every day is ceremony. So I grew up outside of my culture, which is sometimes can be shameful in how you don't know what you don't know. And it's scary to have to relearn those things and reconnect. So this is one of the skirts that I created for a family member, actually. And in doing this, I learned a lot, because this is one of our, as Nipmuc people, one of our basket designs. So the circle in the center represents Creator, and the dots around the circle represent all of our ancestors who are still with us. The 4 domes are the 4 directions, and then around those domes are families that make up our communities. So in this image, it's a teaching about who we are as people, and it was found in our baskets, where our ancestors had them dyed into the baskets and created into our baskets. This is a recurring theme. Owisoko spoke about it earlier, missing and murdered Indigenous women. So, as she said, we make up a small population of the world. However, we have a very lopsided population of women and girls who are missing and murdered in cases not closed. The first one I created for a chief in Waikagama, who is the first female chief in that area, and she wanted this skirt to be made because in her community there was a young lady who was murdered in Nova Scotia, and she left behind 2 twin daughters. So she wanted to wear this to remind her community that this is something that she is going to make sure that she puts as a focus as chief. The second one is the Trail of Tears. Some of our clients asked if we could create this to represent all of the women that have gone missing along this stretch of highway in BC. And so the red dresses represent the women, the highway. It's located in a mountainous region, and she wanted the 2 skirts to show the story of our missing women, the cases that have not been solved. These are some women that I've worked for, also wearing their MMIW skirts. That's Agnes Woodward. She created the skirt for Deb Haaland, who was the Secretary of Interior in the United States. And that's Nahani Fontaine. She is an NDP politician in Manitoba. And then we had the 215 in Kamloops that were uncovered. And during that time, a lot of people reached out to myself and my husband about residential schools and being survivors, and everything was kind of becoming opened up again because as the numbers were rising and of this children uncovered, a lot of people wanted to have something that brought awareness to that. So the first skirt is called They Forgot We Were Seeds, because the child in the orange shirt is actually blooming and growing. So my mother-in-law is a residential school survivor. The pattern of trauma went down the family line, and the skirt that I brought over there was dedicated to her, and it has 2 butterflies on it. One of the butterflies represents my mother-in-law, and the other butterfly represents my granddaughter, because without my mother-in-law surviving, my granddaughter wouldn't have been here. So it's the story of her survival and the story of my granddaughter. These are skirts that were made for women who are on the front lines, fighting for the land, fighting for the water, fighting for the people. The first skirt, 1752 treaty, that's the one that went to Nova Scotia during the fishing controversy or the fishing rights. It was during the time when the nets were being pulled out of the water and the treaty rights were being violated. The second one, also it went to Nova Scotia, and it was protecting the water, the women protecting the water. It was inspired by an original photo of a single woman who was standing in front of the RCMP with her feather, keeping them from coming into the community. The last one was from Wet'suwet'en. They're fighting for their land, and they, in support, communities across Canada blockaded the railroads so that they could help support and send the message to help this community. There's also a red dress on the tracks because a lot of the work camps which they're trying to create in Wet'suwet'en with the oil and the work camps, there is a lot of missing and murdered Indigenous women associated with those camps. So I put the red dress on the tracks because it represents the protection of the women and the land. These are some at a powwow event. These are 3 beautiful ladies who I have worked with who happened to be together and took the picture and sent it to me, which was kind of awesome. And that middle skirt was also with the moose on it. When there was the moose moratorium in Kitiganzibi, she was one of the people that was on shift 24 hours protecting the hunting rights. And that was the skirt that I created for her, showing her tending the fire and protecting the moose. This is another one where they were at an event and they snapped a picture all together and sent it to me. There's teachers there, language teachers from the Maritimes, and they sent it to me, and I was so excited to see them wearing healing stitches. This is Monique Horne. She wore healing stitches to Paris, and she sent me the picture. She's an Olympic medalist from Kahnawake. This is my friend Pine, who is from Tobic First Nation, and she received her doctorate and asked to have a skirt created that she could wear while she defended her dissertation. This one was made because it's called Indigenous love, and it's just a relationship between our men and our women, the roles and responsibilities of the man and the woman, and how we work together as partners. And on the bottom, those are Mi'kmaq designs. So I had a call from Tantu Cardinal's stylist, and I thought it was a prank. So I thought it was a prank. So it wasn't a prank. And she asked to create this skirt. And sometimes what happens is women send us messages and they ask us to help them along on their healing journey and create for them. Sometimes they'll give us stories. Sometimes they'll leave it to me. But a lot of times they want to share and talk. And they want to have their skirt speak for them. And we have, I've had women contact me. I had one woman contact me who was a victim of sex trafficking. And she hadn't told her story. And so she told it to me for the first time and asked if she could have something that spoke to her survival, that spoke to her work as an advocate for women, and to help her with her healing journey so that the skirt could kind of represent what she's overcome. These are some other skirts that I created. The first one was from someone who wanted to, she became a doctor, and she struggled with her traditional teachings and her Western teachings. So she wanted something to show how she uses both of those things when she's caring for her patients. The second one was the hardest skirt that I have ever made. The second skirt is about youth suicide. And as educators, we probably have dealt with this topic more than we would like to, and more in recent times since the pandemic. Suicide ideation, anxiety, just feeling lost. And this was to depict the child in the center who is just lost. And almost there's no color. They want to fade away from everything. And they're in the darker ribbons to symbolize that it's not an easy time for them. But as you move forward, the ribbons become different colors and become more colorful. And the two women are the helpers. Those are our ancestors or our friends or our grandmas that are rooting for us and praying for us and helping us and supporting us, even if we don't know that they are. And I put this skirt away several times before I could actually complete it because of the topic was just really hard for me. And I wanted it to not be a message of despair, but a message of hope. The skirt on the end is just for no more. No more missing Indigenous women. No more missing girls, Two-Spirit. No more. These two skirts, the first skirt with the girl in the canoe, this was created for a young lady who went to the UN in New York and spoke about the waters and the land and conservation. And she wanted something to wear to represent her message. So I titled that skirt, "She Carries the Message." The skirt on the end represents community. How we have, so many people in the community and extended family that are supporting us and caring for us. This is some more of my work, representing stories. The one on the end, "She Carries the Sky." She was graduating from elementary school to go to high school, and she wanted the skirt to represent her, so that is the literal translation of her name. This one here is for the mothers, representing our mothers, our fierce protection of our children, the little bears, the beauty and love that we share. This is another one representing family. These are clan skirts. So a clan skirt represents the clan that you're born into, which is also your family. And we also, we are allowed, well, we are not, that's not the right word, but we get to collaborate with other artists. So we get to share other artists' work. So our belts are made by Val Denny, who is an artist who works with leather. And we have a young girl in Akwesasne who makes our medallions. This one is actually made by Mary Jo, who is a Mi'kmaq. But we get to showcase other people's work through our site. And we have a lot of people that inquire about pieces that we put on our mannequins. Like the Dali that's up there. That's a medallion that's worn, that was made by a woman from Oklahoma. And we get to share their work as well and their art. So this one tells the story of the three sisters. Both of them are different versions. And this one, this skirt that I made was for, there was a contest during the COVID lockdown. And as Owisokon said, we had to have a really heart-to-heart talk because of my feelings of always feeling as if belonging and fitting in are difficult and tough for me. And she always pulls me in and helps me kind of unwind that and figure out what's really going on. And so I told her I was going to do this, or should I do this? And of course she's always, yeah, let's do it. So it was at the beginning of the pandemic, and the masks we were wearing, we're still wearing. But I wanted a piece to show the purpose of what we were doing. So I put it on kind of like a celestial fabric, and I had the elder with her long hair, and then the mother with her hair kind of cradling the baby, and they're both wearing their masks because we are kind of protecting our elders, as Owisokon said, are sacred, and when we lose them, we lose libraries of knowledge, libraries of knowledge. So we had to wear them to protect our elders, and we also had to wear them to protect our future, our children. So I entered this into the contest for NWAC, and it was a positive result.
She actually took first place, and NWAC is Native Women's Association.
Thank you. Okay, and last, I would like you to meet Alaska Glogowicz, my granddaughter, who will not have to feel what we felt, not being raised in culture. Alaska goes to an immersion school, a Mi'kmaq immersion school. She's learning her language. She plays in the sewing room with me all the time, and I get to teach her, which I never had when I was growing up. And each time that, she picks colors for me, she cuts for me, not well. But she loves to be with me, and my husband is a 60 scoop survivor, and we come together with these pieces that we thought were missing that we get to sew together with healing stitches into beautiful creations that tell stories, that tell people stories, and that allow for that feeling of acceptance and connection, which, as Owisokon said before, connection is so important, to be able to connect, to be able to share, to be able to teach. And I will leave you with that.
Thank you. I will lower this. Thank you so much, Owisokon and Candia, for your stories. They're not easy to tell. They're not, they're not always easy to tell the stories. But not only are you sharing your stories, but you're sharing stories of others through your artwork, through your paintings, your photographs, the skirts from Healing Stitches. Thank you so much for sharing them with us today. What I want to do is open up the questions from the audience. So I think we have a microphone. So if you do have a question, if you could just raise your hand. Oh, we've got one right there. Just. Oh, right here in the front. Right here.
Hi, thank you both for sharing such wonderful talks about your art today. You both mentioned that you're teachers, and I wondered how how you might incorporate your art or your teachings into, like, combine them in school at all. Does it affect your teaching, or does it, you know?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yes. For myself, I'm teaching art, so a lot of the information that I'm sharing with them, or whatever art genre we're looking at, I always find Native artists that are doing that type of art and share that with my students. It's important for them to know that we don't live in a bubble, really. We can be more expressive. I found that a lot of creators that are Native don't always depict things that are from our culture. And the reason I think that happens is because much of the culture is considered sacred and ceremonial, and so it's kind of a little bit taboo to show some of that things. And in the paintings that were shown while I was speaking, there's a lot of ceremony within them. And some of the sweat lodges, some of the methods of teaching our youth and getting them to understand that this is a natural part of us and that we need to grow that part and not hide it away anymore. Because when you hide things so much, when you're hiding that culture so much that it becomes a taboo thing, it also becomes lost. Mm-hmm. Because the fewer people know the full ceremony, and they know less and less about the rationale and the reason why things are done that way in that ceremony. And it could be as simple as singing a song that people go, "You're not supposed to sing that. That's sacred. We don't want anybody to learn that." Well, what happens when that person who can sing it is gone? That whole teachings is gone. So I work hard every day to get not only the students, but the other staff and the staff that come that are not Native that teach at the school, to help them to understand our worldview and to understand what we hold sacred and dear, and incorporate that as much as we can into the teaching that happens in the classroom. And we do have Mohawk language classes that are being held. Our students learn 3 languages. They have cultural studies, which is based on traditional culture. We do a lot of hands-on, real-world experiential things. Like this year, we just finished having the students learn how to make smoked leather from a moose hide, and so they did all the work for that. They learn how to plant gardens. They learn how to do the old traditional cooking using the old traditional saved seeds that we have. So we have a lot of heritage seeds.
We have, in the fall, I did a ribbon skirt making workshop with my students. And right now I'm doing one with the young men on ribbon shirts. And Owisokon and I teach STEM as well as language arts. And Owisokon and I are working on a project for our STEM class, STEAM class, using art as a way of showing healing. So they're going to be making a wall display using applique or beadwork or whatever they choose for their material to show what we do to heal and how we heal.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
I did want to say also that our education system really backs up the saving of tradition. And each year during the early part of the school year, they have pedagogical days where they have 2 full days of experiential learning. So one lady does basket making, I did pottery, another one is doing sewing, someone else is doing cooking, how to start fire without matches.
Yep.
And how to build a lodge. There's many different teachings, but it's given to all of the staff who work at the school so that they have a broader knowledge of the old lifestyle that we can't always live today. And we do have a place up north where it's off-grid. So I have a place that's there, a cottage that's there. And so I bring people there also to experience like what's edible, what's not edible. Let's go on a journey today and let's see what nature brings us. And it's amazing when you start doing that connection of how giving the universe is. When you really need something, you just have to ask. But be specific.
I did want to say that through our school, Owisokon taught sewing for like our grads and also staff. That's where I learned to sew, was from Owisokon, because she had these classes after school where we could make traditional clothing. And she encouraged me to, like, my brain had ideas that my skills didn't have yet. And so I learned from her how to create, and I learned that it was a place where we could tell stories, where we could share experiences as we were sewing. And it's kind of like almost surreal that I get to have that experience now as the teacher with my students. So, nyawa.
Yo.
Thank you. I think we have time for just one brief, we have one right here. Okay, Margaret.
I just had a question about the ribbon skirts, which are absolutely beautiful. And I see a lot of ribbon skirts on Instagram. And I'm just really curious about the history of them. Like when, why, where, anything you know.
So our ribbon skirts kind of go along with our material culture. And there's different teachings in different communities. So in some communities, the shape of the skirt is almost like a teepee. And it's kind of like respecting the women, how we are like the life givers. And in some communities, the ribbons hang off of the side, and they feel like when they touch the earth, it reminds Mother Nature of who we are. And when we started to get cotton, and we started to get wool, and we started to get silks, the skirts became part of, like the women would wear them as part of their ceremonial clothing and their clothing. Then we started, like, not that long ago, they started to become more like fashion, like Indigenous fashion. I still wear my ribbon skirts when I go into the lodge and for ceremony, but I don't wear the same skirts that I wear in the lodge as I do when I wear them at school. And when I wear them at school, it's a statement of almost like resilience that we're still here, and you can wear your traditional clothing wherever it is that you want to, because life is ceremony. So I know that for me, my ribbon skirt means safety and protection. When I wear it, I feel safe, and I feel like I'm reclaiming who I am, and I enjoy that very much. The ribbons can, some people have different thoughts on the number of ribbons and the colors of ribbons, but to me, I have women asking for several different colors that represent them, that they were either given in the lodge or that they are more, that they like. There's medicine colors that some people ask for. They tell me the story of why they want the colors that they want and the number of ribbons that they want. There's no, for me, it's not the rules so much as it's how you feel when you wear your skirt and why it's important to you. So, I mean, the teachings are so different depending upon where you are and in what community. And for me, I mean, Owisokon tells me to wear them because they're awesome.
Yes, they are.
Thank you so much. The time, unfortunately, has come to an end. This has been absolutely wonderful. Owisokon and Candia, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to come here today and talk to us. To those of you who are here present in the audience, thank you for attending, and those that are watching through our live stream. If there's one thing that I'd like to leave with everyone is that stories were shared here today. If you can actually share this a story with one other person, then we play our part in educating and transfer of knowledge, and share the knowledge that we have learned today. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.